My name is Edith Juguna, and I am the director of the Illinois 60 by 25 network. Thank you all for joining us for this session on opportunities and challenges of virtual learning. We know this is a topic of great interest given the times we're living in, and we're very pleased that so many people signed up. We're also very fortunate to have Dr. Patrick Hardy, principal of Proviso East High School in Maywood, and Bridget French, the executive director of college and career readiness for Rockford Public Schools, share their experiences on this topic. You can learn more about them on the conference website. My colleague put in the chat that this session will be recorded and the material will be available after the conference. And there will be time for Q&A, so please drop questions in the chat and we will monitor them. Over to you, Dr. Hardy and Bridget.
Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Patrick Hardy. I have the privilege of serving at the historic Proviso East High School out in Maywood. My colleague is Bridget French from the Rockford Public Schools, and we are so honored to be here with you today and to share some thoughts. We have two objectives. It's number one, we want to share with you our opportunities that emerge during virtual learning, remote learning, and then also share some challenges that came our way. And we think you're going to get two very unique perspectives on that work, and we're honored to be able to share with you. Bridget, are you seeing the presentation? We're all good?
Yes, all good.
So I will yield to Bridget, and we want to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about ourselves, and then we'll get started.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you, Edith, and all the conference organizers for having us today. It's really our honor to be here to share with you what we've learned so far. That's coming up on almost a year now of this pandemic. So my name is Bridget French. I am the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness for Rockford Public Schools. I primarily work with our secondary schools, mainly high schools, now bridging a little bit into middle schools. That's some of our team there. Working with Ed Systems, and I want to give a special thank you to the Ed Systems team at NIU. They've provided an enormous amount of technical assistance to us over the past few years, and we truly wouldn't be where we are today without them. So thank you so much. And Dr. Hardy.
Hey, again, my name is Patrick Hardy. I am in a very different situation. I took over Proviso East nearly, 6 years ago. And ours is designated as an underperforming school. So we are a suburban school located in Maywood, but we had nearly every urban challenge that you can think of: poverty, racial and diversity issues, as well as underperformance academically, high teacher turnover. And we consider ourselves to be in what we call the last battle. We fought very hard and won the culture war here at Proviso East. Setting a new standard for high expectations. Of course, you know, we had, in a school like ours, we had to deal with some of those climate issues that were there. We're very proud of those. And we joined the state's pilot for competency-based education, what we call personalized competency-based education, and became the first certified Marzano Academy in the nation for personalized competency-based education. And we're very proud of that work. And we've had some pretty good success. Our last battle is that academic battle. And what we specifically mean by that is test scores. No one cares about our achievement. What they care about is the attainment on the school report card. So we're trying to make sure more students are hitting that 1080 on the SAT, along with the other designations that are there. So that's our work so far. And we're honored to be here to share with you some of the work that came out of that. And we'll do that in just a moment. Bridget, you have it. My sister, you are muted.
I knew I was going to do that. I knew it. Just a little bit about Rockford Public Schools. We serve birth to 12 and about 28,000 students. As I said, I primarily oversee college and career readiness, early college credit for the district. We have 4 traditional high schools and 1 alternative high school for credit recovery. My position sits in the central office in the administrative building, working with our programs of study within our academies. So I'll mainly focus on secondary schools today, but for our entire district, what was important for us to message to families and staff was the difference between synchronous and asynchronous learning. I think we all know, we all throw a lot of educational jargon around easily. And so it was important to identify the difference between these two things on all of our communications materials to our families. Our K-5 instructional model was an either or, so either 5 days full in-person instruction or 5 days remote. The students will all and continue to all go to school a half day on Wednesdays, and that day is focused around enrichment and interventions. And then in the afternoon, our teachers have time for PLC, for teacher planning time in the afternoons. Our instructional model for 6 through 12 is either hybrid or remote. So students who are hybrid are in person 2 days and remote 3 days. And then all of our secondary teachers are in their own classroom versus our elementary school teachers are either in their classroom with students from their zoned school, or we grouped all of our remote students together. So a 3rd grade teacher may be teaching remote students from all over the district at that grade level. So this is a sample schedule for our hybrid secondary students, where students learn synchronously Monday, Thursday, and asynchronously Tuesday, Friday. Wednesday, I will get to in a minute here, but Wednesday is what we call What I Need Wednesday. So students would go in the morning for some enrichment or intervention, or they would do remote learning at home. And then in the afternoon, we have more teacher planning. So this is what asynchronous instruction looks like for students in the hybrid model. They would be spending time to reflect, to practice, review, hopefully connecting with their peers to work on collaborative tasks and projects with a variety of digital tools provided to them on their district issued laptops. The remote instructional model for secondary students who were completely at home learning was a little bit different. So Monday and Thursday for those students, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide here, thanks. Monday and Thursday for those students would be remote learning, and then Tuesday and Thursday would be, Tuesday and Friday would be synchronous. So those same teachers that taught the in-person students on Monday, Thursday are now teaching their students on a bell schedule Tuesday and Friday. So this is what synchronous instruction looks like for remote students. They will follow their bell schedule, and we really encourage teachers to limit teacher talk. We really want students to guide and direct their learning and encourage teachers to really be the facilitator of that conversation rather than the driver of the conversation. Our teachers then in our secondary schools, again, would be doing in-person instruction Monday, Thursday, and remote Tuesday, Friday, teaching the same content on Monday and Tuesday, and then again on Thursday and Friday, with Wednesday being that small intervention group time called What I Need Wednesdays. So this was really where we thought we were going to see the most success was Wednesday instruction. And that is based on, if you go to the next slide, the multi-tiered systems of support used to be a pyramid, is now a diamond, where we really identified what tier does each student fall into and how can we really tailor our instruction based on what those students need. So that might be for students in tier 1, it might be just a little bit of extra time to work on homework. It might be enrichment time. For tier 2 students, it might be makeup for projects, homework, tests, a little bit of extra tutoring. And for students in both tier 2 and 3, it was a lot of social emotional connecting with counselors, social workers, parent liaisons, to help really guide our students through this pandemic and the impact that it's having on them. We intended the schedule of What I Need Wednesday to look like this: 20 minutes of instruction with the teacher, and then split into groups based on what students needed. So what did they need based on what subject or topic they were struggling with, or time for that social emotional support, a little bit of time for independent work, and then group everyone back together at the end of the day. And then the afternoon schedule for teachers looked like this. We would have a little bit of time after the students leave for them to have lunch, and then they would have their professional learning community time by content area, and then their smaller learning community time by academy. So again, we're wall-to-wall academies. So this is really a big win for our department, because oftentimes the smaller learning community meetings are not held by all teachers. So some teachers may have lunch or have another time, another class during that time. So it's really a big win that we could see all of this really intentional, devoted time for teachers to work together to plan. And then the rest of the day after those team meetings was free for the teacher to plan for their classes for the next day. So what went well for us? We had a lot of success finally moving to a one-to-one district. It's been, okay. It's been a long time in talking about going to one-to-one, but we finally did it this year, which was a big win for us. And then providing students with internet, whether that was Wi-Fi through Comcast, which is our provider, district purchased Wi-Fi if they were not able to purchase, or they were not able to gain access to the free Wi-Fi through Comcast's program. It still had some barriers to entry for some of our families. And for those that were living in areas that were too remote, we purchased hotspots for them. We also purchased a subscription to Amazon Web Services, which allowed students to access some of the more complex programs on their Chromebooks. So the laptops that we gave students were Chromebooks. They were not able to run programs that are required for courses like Project Lead the Way or Adobe Creative Suite needed for InDesign. So Amazon Web Services actually allows you to network into the computers at the school and allow students to use those programs on your computer, on your Chromebook. And then our educational technology department created a site with how-tos of everything you would want to know on all of the programs that we're using. And also what was a big win was teachers began to create screencastifys of how to do different things in Google and different other technology sites like Nearpod to show their peers how to use them. So that was really cool to see. And then another win for us was Win Wednesday at the elementary school level. So they truly were differentiating. They were working with students. They would start at 7:30 and go to 11 on whatever they needed. So you need help in math, we're going to spend the whole day doing math. And they made a lot of fun activities about it, so it wasn't super daunting for students, but they really created differentiated opportunities for our elementary school students. We also hired additional parent liaisons with our Title I dollars to be able to allow our counselors and social workers and behavior intervention specialists to have smaller caseloads so that we could really connect with students, which included obviously phone calls home, but even home visits, which I think we all know that it almost became a necessity this year just in trying to reach every single student possible. Our principals and assistant principals were also taking student caseloads to help connect with some of the students that we could not get a hold of. And it just kind of naturally happened that we had a 50-50 split of remote versus in person. So that allowed our teachers to have smaller class sizes and did not require our teachers to teach remote and in person concurrently. Some opportunities. It was difficult to engage students in work-based learning. I think this is not uncommon, But after students were on Zoom all day, the last thing they wanted to do was attend another Zoom of a site visit or a tour of a company. So it's been very difficult to get students engaged in work-based learning, even though our partners have provided an excellent amount of opportunities for students. It's just difficult to get them engaged in it. Very difficult to engage our remote learners. So part of the problem with What I Need Wednesday at the secondary level is we didn't make it mandatory. So that meant, you probably guessed it, very, very low attendance. So when I said that we tried to stick to that 20-minute schedule, what that really transitioned into was, please just come in and we'll do whatever you need. We won't even structure the day. You want to come in for 2 hours and get help and then leave? Cool. Just because we wanted to get students engaged and get them in the building. And then again, just extremely difficult to engage remote learners. So this is some of our data from first semester, and you can see the difference in our freshman on track rate from in-person to remote. You definitely can also see the correlation between attendance and on track rate. So the students who are attending less than 89% of the time only have a 50% on track rate. So we're definitely seeing a correlation there. So what are our next steps? We know we're going to have a lot of credit recovery that we need to do over the summer. We're going to have a lot of work to do with our students to get them where they need to be after this very unpredictable year. So we're working with our community to create some programs for all of our students. We're creating some step up or summer bridge programs at all of our high schools that incoming ninth graders can participate in. We are creating some elective credit courses for algebra and English, because those are two of the highest failure rate classes we have right now in 8th grade. So ensuring that students are high school ready when they enter, but also providing them with elective credit right out the gate. We also have had some employers contact us about embedded credit recovery. So our local park district here said, hey, I employ 500 students from RPS 205. I can give them an hour or two every day that they're here of paid time to work on credit recovery. That is an incredible, very generous opportunity for our students to essentially be getting paid to work on recovering their credit while they're working at their job. And then typically we offer summer school that has a tuition. This year we have some dollars that we're going to allocate to summer school in order to allow students to come for free, so that there are absolutely no barriers to entry to making sure all of our students are getting where they need to be. So I think that's it for me. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dr. Hardy. Thank you. Excellent job advancing my slides.
Thank you so much. Bridget gave you all a great perspective from a district lens of the challenges and opportunities that Rockford faced in this remote or virtual environment, depending on which language you're using. I have a few minutes just to share what it was like at a building level, having to face teaching and learning in one of the greatest challenges we've all faced in our entire careers, a worldwide pandemic. Just to remind you, in 2016, the governor signed the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act. And the thing that I want to focus on was how the law opened up and asked for schools to participate in establishing innovative competency-based learning systems. Given the kind of school that I told you we were looking for a different instructional framework. We needed to do something different. We were failing our students weren't engaged, and my team and I were asked to come in and to figure a way forward, and this provided a huge open door for us. In our work, there are 16 very specific school-wide indicators that we are looking for. And of course, they range from everything from the very basics. Do we have a safe, orderly, and supportive environment? And there are indicators, there are components of that indicator underneath that. And then there is everything from the instructional side around vocabulary, What we call cognitive and metacognitive skills. We actually teach those explicitly. We call them measurement topics and proficiency scales. Some other people refer to them as standards. Assessments, reporting and grading, all the way up to the school-wide things that we have to deal with at the administrative level. How are we promoting flexible scheduling? Student efficacy and agency, that's at the heart of our work of competency-based education. You may have heard phrases like students learn at their own pace. Well, we don't believe that. Students learn at a negotiated pace with gradual release. The point, though, is that they have to have student efficacy and agency in order for that to even work. So it's something that we actually explicitly teach here in the building. Those are our 16 indicators. Now hold that in your mind, because we found out that there were 3 specific challenges we were facing when we went to virtual learning and our schools shut down. Number one, you've heard it before, our entire careers almost. There was just too much content. Secondly, and obviously there was no in-person learning. We are not a virtual high school. And then thirdly, how do we assess learning when you can't use the obtrusive tests that you're used to? So we couldn't sit everybody down and say, take this quiz or take this assessment. And so it really challenged us. And what's important is that it brought us to 5 interrelated opportunities. And I want to talk about those in just a moment. But those 5 interrelated opportunities are blended instruction, something we refer to as cumulative review, collective responsibility, assessment, and then MTs, measurement topics, and proficiency scales. Let me talk about number 1. Challenge number 1, there was too much content. We've heard this before, right? Too many standards, not enough time. I was a K-8 principal. Bridget, right there at Ellis Arts Academy in Rockford when it was a K-8 school. And I've been a high school principal for some time in my career. And I've heard it at all the levels, elementary, middle, and high. Too much content, we just don't have enough time. I love the way Marzano and his team said it. It's clear that attempting to teach and assess all standards is an exercise in futility. We know it, we just don't talk about it enough, whether it's the next generation science standards or the Common Core standards. I want to just show you one example. This is just one 7th grade math standard. Of course, time won't permit me to get too deep into it, but think about it. In this one standard, there are 5 components to each of those 7th grade math standards. On average, there's a 5. In some, there are more than 5 components. So on average, you're talking about 145 components or elements in 180 days. And that's just 7th grade, and that's just math. Our teachers were facing just a huge challenge in terms of that work. So it allowed us to really promote this notion of specific measurement topics with explicit proficiency scales in our work. What is a measurement topic? That's the broad content in the classroom that we're going to assess. And then the proficiency scale is that content organized into levels of difficulty. So it allowed us to promote and further promote, because we were already doing the work, but that challenge created this real opportunity, and it allowed our teachers to see, we're not going to sit teachers in front of students in front of a computer for 75 minutes while we talk away. So we really have to reduce the amount of content we're covering to those, I don't know if any of you remember, power standards, essential standards, all those phrases where we really took advantage of that. Let me give you one example. This is Integrated Math 2. Integrated Math 2 literally has 10 measurement topics. That's it. That's what we're going to cover in the class. This is what's going to be assessed in the class. None of the other periphery stuff, that we've seen happen. And there may be some other topics that may need to be scaffolded into these 10, but these are the 10. Can you imagine the amount of debate and really great discussion that happened amongst math teachers in general, and then this grade level, this content area team, about what are really the things that we're going to have to do, because school's out, school's closed, and it really advanced our work. Here's chemistry. There are 12 measurement topics. That's it. This is what we're going to cover. And why? Because this is what we actually intend to assess. It's not going to be anything on an assessment that we did not cover in class here. So that's an example of a list of measurement topics. Now let me show you an actual proficiency scale. And I acknowledge at the outset that this is really small. But what I want to really focus on, though, is the score 3 learning target. Our students, we don't have traditional grades. So our students are going to receive a score 1, a score 2, or a 3, or a 4 in their work. And notice here, it's not an amount of points you're shooting for. It's not a 70 to a 79 so you can get a C. It's not a 60 to 69 so you can get a D. It's, can you explain the basic premise for liberalism and democracy and how they're joined in the Declaration of Independence and so on? That's the learning target. You have to give us evidence that you can do that so that you earn the score 3. We have a little mantra here at Proviso East, score 3 or see me. That's what our teachers say. You can either demonstrate it or you gotta come see me. As an aside, we look for 3 pieces of evidence that the student has demonstrated competency in that learning target. I wanna skip this one just for the sake of time. And now here's another one from English. This is English, what you might call English 4, senior level English. What we want to know is, can the student evaluate the relevance and credibility of sources and the rest of the language that you see there? So can you imagine in this virtual environment, students knew the exact measurement topics they would need to cover. And within that, they understood the specific learning target they were shooting for. The challenge, too much content, created a huge opportunity for us to really narrow the scope of work and get focused on what we've known for years. We got to narrow the focus, get down to the essentials without losing the rigor of what the work was intended to be. So we were able to reduce the amount of content, develop a list of measurement topics, generate proficiency scales for each measurement topic, and compose well-defined score 3s, those well-defined learning targets. Within that same challenge, though, there was another opportunity. Remember I said 5 indicators that were interrelated? So the first one was measurement topics and proficiency scales. The second opportunity under this challenge was for an indicator we call cumulative review. And so, what does it mean? Teachers continually review content in the proficiency scales for each measurement topic. In the traditional world, when you've tested, you're done. In our world, we may come back to it again. And especially if that topic, that learning target is connected to a deficiency we have on the PSAT. So they're not reviewing everything from a previous unit, but those really important ones, especially where we've gone through the skills insight document in the PSAT and we've said, hey, these are some deficiencies we have to work on. By the way, our teachers did that work. They've aligned their proficiency scales to the deficiencies in the PSAT. So we know we're hitting some of those really, really deep targets that we need to improve on the state exam. And so those are the ones that are going to continually come up. We're going to circle back, cumulative review. If you remember back in the day, it was called looping. And so whether it's through discussion and questioning, whether it's through notes and revising, or presented problems, or released sample items, those topics are going to continue to come up, cumulative review. The third opportunity that presented itself under too much content was this notion of collective responsibility. I can be brief here by simply stating that in the traditional world our school came from, only the teacher of that content was responsible for grading a student in that content. We broke that mold here. And so in the competency-based world, any teacher and every teacher is responsible for grading and assessing a student in their content. So if you can imagine a student completing a project can complete measurement topics from multiple different courses. So that science project can certainly include math measurement topics or learning targets. It can include speaking and listening, because if you have to present measurement topics and learning targets, it can include writing, measurement topics and learning targets, as well as the science content. And what it did was it really broke the mold. Our teachers are learning to trust other teachers when they say, this student has demonstrated, I have a piece of evidence that this student has demonstrated competency. Now, you may recall, student needs 3 pieces of evidence or more. So that one may not do it. It's not the end all be all, but allowing in an environment where we had to lessen our contact with students to be able to say we're all responsible for the grading of content and those measurement topics, it was really a great opportunity for us presented by what was a challenge. And so we saw 3 things occur there: cumulative review, collective responsibility, and our measurement topics and proficiency scales were a way in which we responded to challenge number 1, too much content, not enough time. Challenge number 2, no in-person learning. I know it seems obvious, but that was a struggle for us as a traditional in-person school. So let me just share 2 things with you real quick. We focused on blended learning. We were doing it before. Remember, it's one of our 16 indicators. But this really, the situation really calls us to dive in. And so I want you to catch the language. It's blended learning in a remote or hybrid context. We chose not to conflate terms. And so we focused on face-to-face or the mastery-based model. Here is what that means. It's that online instruction. So right in that virtual environment, that teacher might do that 20-minute introduction, that 15-minute introduction, and then direct students to some online resources or activities. And oftentimes, but not all the time, it may be a student who's advancing in their work. They are ahead of pace. And oftentimes it's students who may be challenged in their work. They're behind pace. And it allowed the teacher to really differentiate, do breakout groups in Microsoft Teams. And our scholars would rotate between online and remote instruction. Remote meaning the in-person, that remote learning with that teacher through Microsoft Teams. And it also allowed us to assess scholars at different times. The other model we use, you know it as the flex model. That's where online work, that's the backbone. Not a lot of remote instruction. That's Edgenuity, Plato. We really had to figure out how we check this out. This is crazy, right? We went into Plato, we went into Edgenuity. We went into Edgenuity, and we identified the modules that align with that list of measurement topics. So we're not assigning entire classes in Edgenuity. We're assigning the modules that align with the measurement topics for that course. Very specific. By the way, it's how we do the 5th quarter, which you may know as summer school. We don't call it that. We call it the 5th quarter because in the competency-based environment, learning is ongoing. So it's used with those non-traditional scholars. Learning is self-guided and a little more independent. And so it really allowed us to focus on that blended learning, those 2 approaches in this remote and hybrid context. So that was our response to challenge number 2. How do we really lean into blended learning when we don't have students in front of us? So that covered blended instruction, cumulative review, collective responsibility, measurement topics, and proficiency scales. Let me talk about the last challenge. So we're trying to move away from the notion of sit down, take a quiz, take a final, take a test, make a presentation. Hard to do when students aren't sitting in front of you. Not impossible, just more difficult. But our philosophy isn't that anyway. It's more about what we refer to as the measurement process. We want to test less and assess more. So we conduct multiple types of assessment over time. Think of quizzes and tests as just one form of assessment. We call those obtrusive tests. everyone stop what they're doing, sit down, take this quiz or test. That's just one way, but you can assess a student's knowledge through a discussion. You can assess their knowledge through observation. You can assess their knowledge through a one-on-one discussion. You can ask them questions. Like, there are so many ways to actually assess students' learning. We call it the preponderance of evidence. What does all the evidence say to you about a student's learning, not just this weighted quiz or test? Then lastly, I want to share with you what it allowed us to do was it gave us a way to systemically collect evidence through this measurement process where we're translating evidence into a number on that scale. Was the student still in need of support? Score 2. Did the evidence say that the student demonstrated competency? Score 3. Give you a little fun fact. So it allows us, we don't give finals here. First of all, we don't believe in weighted grades. We're not gonna say to a student, all of the learning you did before is null and void because this final weighs X percentage of your grade. We don't even give the final. What we do during final exam time is students are allowed to go back and work on those measurement topics, specific learning targets where they have a score 2 or below. And if the teacher gives a final, that final, which is assessing multiple measurement topics, they have to give a grade for each measurement topic assessed, not an average. And it really changed the way we did our work. So that was our response to the third and final challenge of how do we assess when students are not present? It allowed us to push this change in assessment philosophy. So to summarize, we had 3 challenges, but the opportunities were interrelated. We have measurement topics and proficiency scales that are aligned to our assessments. We instruct with a heavy emphasis on 2 blended learning models so that our assessments and that instruction is aligned to those measurement topics. We're all responsible for grading content, and we're gonna loop back and grade content again and again and again so that we can assure students demonstrate competency in our work. We wanted to leave a lot of time for question and answer. That's our sharing. You got 2 very different and distinct perspectives there. And I know it was a mouthful because we really wanted to leave time for the Q&A. We hope that we generated some discussion. And if I can stop sharing, and I will share again, Bridget, if someone says put that slide back up or something, I'm happy to try to do that. I'll try to follow along. So we want to look over in the chat and start responding to some of the questions that we may see there. And we're hoping that something of what we said today was of some benefit to you as you think about your work and as we respond to questions or comments that are in the chat. Bridget, I see a good afternoon to Joshua, so we all want to say good afternoon to Joshua. What's up, Josh? And welcome and thank you for joining us.
Joshua is one of the Student Advisory Council members.
Hey,
so shout out to you, Joshua.
Thank you. Emily really loved your idea, Bridget, of what Rockford is doing in the What I Need Wednesday. She really appreciated the What I Need Wednesday. Did you want to expound on that for just a second and how that's, I know you didn't get a chance to say a lot there, but what's really working for you there?
Yeah, I think there was a question about whether or not we required lesson plans, and we did that in the spring semester of last year, and we did not do that this year. We felt that, you know, what we really wanted teachers to be focused on was differentiating their instruction and not worrying about turning in a lesson plan every single week. So we let that up to the principals. If the principals wanted to require lesson plans, that was fine, but we did not as a central office require that. So it looks like the other questions are about competency-based learning. How does that work with AP? And then what was the transition like to competency-based education?
Cool, and I'm hoping you'll jump in where you feel like it, Bridget, on some of these, even though they're CBE. I know that that question was about the work in Rockford, but just so you know, we also don't require lesson plans of teachers. We don't even look for that. In fact, you should know that we strongly recommend teachers don't do daily lesson plans because they don't honor the competency-based approach. That lesson plan is typically going to steer students into that one thing that's going to be done that day. So we ask teachers to develop unit plans with several learning experiences over the course of a unit, so that a student who is learning at their own pace can be in any of those learning experiences, covering any of the measurement topics in that unit. So we really, and we strongly recommend that they move towards unit planning. We try hard not to touch the AP courses. As you can imagine, there are always exceptions to the rules. So we do have IB courses here, and we do, which is pretty prescriptive. And we do have AP courses, and they are also pretty prescriptive. Here is what we did ask the teachers to do. Translate the work of the AP courses into a proficiency scale, which they did. So students are seeing the same approach in the courses, and then, you know, making sure that we're developing units in those AP classes, you know, where we can, and those IB classes, not necessarily daily lesson plans. The proficiency scales was interesting because, in fact, I'd like to pause because I wondered how Bridget might respond to the AP question, because I know you have AP questions in Rockford as well. And how would you respond to that particular part for the asynchronous / synchronous? Because I know there was an impact there. Can you speak to that if you can, around how it impacted your AP classes? And I'm not sure if you all have IB.
We do not have IB. We do obviously have AP, and it's been difficult on our students because essentially we're, you know, in the in-person instruction only being 2 days. It really is really structuring the course more like a college course where students are left to do some of that learning on their own and the reading and research. And that's why we've been doing a lot of pushing to get kids to come in on Wednesdays to get that additional support, because it is difficult to go from a traditional school model and then all of a sudden be in an AP course as a sophomore, junior, senior level student, and have to really manage your own time, manage your own learning. I mean, these are our skills all of a sudden we expected our students to have, right? And you can't expect them to be able to do that overnight. So just making sure that every student had either some trusted adult at home that was supporting them, or making sure that our parent liaisons, our counselors were making sure there was a touch point with every single kid.
Yeah. One question from one of our colleagues was the transition to proficiency scales difficult for teachers to adjust to, because they're trying to do something similar in their high school. So as I'm going to model what we expect, right? So the answer to that is as complicated as you might think. It depended on the teacher. Every teacher, just like every student is different. I know I'm not, Cara, I know I'm not giving you like a canned answer, but that's just so real. We made sure our teachers understood that while you're innovating, we're not trying to evaluate you. That's important for us. Those two quadrants of that principal leadership, the one side of it is about evaluating your competence. The other side is about facilitating growth. And we stayed on the growth side. I stood in front of the entire faculty and staff and made it clear, if your evaluator, department chair, division head, or assistant principal, places any information about competency-based education in your evaluation, I will overturn the rating, because we're not going to evaluate your competence while you're trying to innovate. What were we trying to do? You know what we were trying to do. We were trying to create a safe environment where teachers felt safe to take the risk, knowing that it wasn't going to come back to bite them. So in their evaluation, we stayed broad. And so we didn't really talk about proficiency scales in those environments. We gave them the space to innovate, to fall, to fail, to try again, to get the input from their students and so on, and then work through it. And so that made the transition a little easier for people. And the second part is that I want to speak to is the transition to competency-based education, generally speaking. I would not try to convince this group that we have transitioned. We're not. This is ongoing. As you can imagine, we're trying to get traditional teachers and leaders to change our mindsets about so many different things. Everything from assessment. How about a small thing? If the student does not earn a score 3 on assessment, they can take it again, but they don't have to take the entire assessment again. They only need to take the questions that they got wrong, and then they get full credit for those questions. Not you retake it, remember this stuff, y'all? And the highest grade we'll average the two together and then that's your grade. That is such an insult to their learning. If they've gone back and the light bulb has gone off, give them credit for their learning. And so we really are still transitioning. We are 9th through 11th grade, full competency-based wall-to-wall courses. And next year we'll be full competency-based in the 12th, because all 4 grades, I'm trying to stop talking so much. All 4 grades will be there next year because we launched in our 9th grade. We tried to do it the right way. We launched in 9th grade and worked our way up as opposed to dropping it on everyone all at once. Bridget, would you like to talk about, I know it wasn't the question, our transition is ongoing and we tried to make it easy. What was the transition like to the asynchronous synchronous model? How was that for teachers? And so I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that, even though the context is different.
Sure. Yeah, it was, as you said, very much depended on the teachers. So teachers that were very used to doing the, what did they say, sage on a stage model of teaching had a difficulty in this model because they started out making rules for students. Like you have to have your camera on to get a point. You have to speak at least once to get a point. And we did some professional development that said, you know, it's okay if students don't have their cameras on. It is important that they're there and that they're engaged, but in the classrooms that I've observed, the students that are engaged have their cameras on, and the teachers that are engaging the students don't have to ask for their cameras to be turned on. So it really is about thinking about education differently. And I don't think, you know, we always talk about like, well, when things go back to normal, I think we're going to have a new normal. I don't think things are ever going to go back to the way that they were. And I think that that's a good thing.
Right.
I think this has forced us to really look at what kids need. And remote learning is working well for a very small amount of our students, but still working well for those students. So moving forward, what does that look like?
Hey, Bridget, keep talking a little bit, and I'll come back to the other question that's there about the CBE movement and the LMS. How is Rockford handling attendance for students? And for you, does that play a part in any of the assessments? One of our colleagues, their district's still evaluating that. So talk about attendance a little bit.
So students have to check in when they are asynchronous before 10 o'clock. And what we started doing was having them check in via a Google form for all 7 of their classes. And what that was causing was just an enormous amount of administrative work for our teachers. So we changed that to where they check in once prior to 10 a.m. for their entire day. And that has lifted that admin drain a little bit. But no, it doesn't count toward their assessment at all. We have looked at like our attendance policies. We haven't really changed anything, though I would say we are a little bit more lenient this year, just because we don't want to make threatening phone calls or letters and discourage kids even more from coming to school. We want to do everything we can to get kids into school. And, you know, sometimes if kids are failing or if they have a certain amount of days out of school, they feel that it's hopeless and that is a cause for complete disengagement. We really want to avoid that. So we're trying to figure out all ways to meet students where they're at.
Yeah, for us, Bridget, attendance doesn't play a part because remember, the student colleagues, if there is a specific assessment in that course, for example, the common assessment that the whole content area is going to give, the teacher wouldn't even give the assessment to a student. Remember, our students are learning and are being assessed at different times. To a student, they wouldn't even give it to a student who doesn't have 3 pieces of evidence that they've demonstrated competency in the first. So we don't assess students if they don't have score, if they're not at a score 3 anyway. So if the student's not attending, why would that student be receiving an assessment in the first place? Because we don't do what I experienced in high school way long time ago, was we took tests on Fridays because it was Friday. Nobody ever asked me if I was ready. And that's even in elementary school. I still remember Bridget's spelling tests on Friday, not because I knew the words, but because it was Friday, right? And we just don't do that anymore. We know you're competent. We have a preponderance of evidence that you're competent. And if there is a specific assessment, now we know you're ready for it. And if by chance the assessment made you nervous or whatever was happening and you didn't get that score 3, we're going to give it to you anyway after some cumulative review and so on. So attendance, it plays a part in that it informs whether we're giving the assessment in the first place. Someone asked about the LMS that we use at Proviso East. We are full on competency-based, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's given us all kinds of heck, I wanna say another word, because we use something called Empower. It's used here, it's used in Colorado, Maine, Barack Obama Charter School, Lindsay, California, Highland Tech Charter School in Alaska. We use Empower, but the state doesn't pull anything from Empower. So we still, and our district doesn't pull anything from Empower for all that state reporting. So our teachers still have to translate, check this out, the competency-based grade into a traditional grade only for state reporting. And we have a special set of grades issued by the state for us that we can use, which is an A, because a score 3 for us is an A. And remember, the student has to be at the score 3 or nothing else matters. So it's a score 3, an A, an S, which means the student is making progress, or it's a U, the student, even with help, has made no progress. But that only for state reporting. Our parents and students never see that. That's not, theirs is 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what they're shooting for. And we're trying to get them to understand that language. So we do use Empower. It has created some challenges for us. And we're still struggling through that. Everything from athletic eligibility, we do have a new eligibility formula, and trying to make sure we pull that in from Empower the right way. If you know anything about, if you're high school folks, you know it's passing a class. Well, we don't do passing. We're either on pace, behind pace, or ahead of pace. So it's really an innovative space, and I'm so proud to be a part of it, even though I had hair when I came here and I don't now. So there you go. It's causing us some stress. And did the CBE movement, what time is it? Did the CBE movement within the school help that high-level teacher turnover that was mentioned earlier sort of slow down? No, I'm not gonna lie to you. I know they're recording this and one of my teachers might hear it. So no, that's not what it was. Let me tell you what it was and you'll understand it. Before I got here, SWAT teams were here regularly arresting students. There were mob fights, lots of expulsions, a lot of disrespect shown towards teachers. When we got rid of that, that made teachers want to stay here and work here. Did competency-based education and being in an innovative school help after the fact? Yes, it did. Did seeing the culture of our school change? Sure, it did. But we had huge climate issues that we had to struggle through. And I would not want to deceive you by saying CBE did it. CBE came later. We just wanted, my first week of work, they pushed the doors open. Some adults came in the building, jumped on a teacher and a kid, ran back out the building. We needed that kind of stuff to stop so that high quality teachers would apply here and want to work here. I took over the school after the school year started. I took over in September. When I walked in the door, there were still 17 teacher vacancies with no applicants. Nobody wanted to work here. So I shouldn't say nobody. It was what it was, and call me one day and I'll tell you more about that. But I didn't want to deceive you. Bridget, I think we covered many, if not all, of the comments in the chat, and I think we should yield it back to Edith. I saw you, Destiny. Just whoever that was to, just find us. I'm on the website. Bridget's on her website. Find us. And we want to thank Josh, our Student Advisory Council member, for sitting through this. And Josh, we hope something here was of value to you as a student. Thank you so much. Bridget, you want to get a word in? Thank you, everybody.
No, I just want to echo your thanks. And as Dr. Hardy said, feel free to reach out to us if you have further questions, but we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Hardy and Bridget. We really appreciate your very informative and candid information that you shared with us. And like I said earlier, the information will be on our website, so folks can go back to it if you want to catch something that you missed or share it with your colleagues. And thanks also to everyone who attended this session for your engagement. And we will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for our opening plenary. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.